We're going to start our session very, very shortly. I request everyone to come in. Please take a seat. This is the third and concluding session of the Holy Quran and Science Symposium. We're going to begin this session, as always, with a tilawat of the Holy Quran. I request Missionary Jaleese Dar for the tilawat and translation, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أولم ير الذين كفروا أن السماوات والأرض كانتا رتقا ففتقناهما وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي أفلا يؤمنون وجعلنا في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بهم وجعلنا فيها فجاجا سبلا لعلهم يهتدون وجعلنا السماء سقفا محفوظا وهم عن آياتها معرضون وهو الذي خلق الليل والنهار والشمس والقمر كل في فلك يسبحون. I will now present the English translation of the verses recited from Surah Anbiya, chapter 21 of the Holy Quran. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, ever merciful. Do not the disbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were a closed up mass? Then we opened them out, and we made from water every living thing. Will they not then believe? And we have made in the earth firm mountains, lest it should quake with them. And we have made therein wide pathways, that they may be rightly guided. And we have made the heaven a roof well protected, yet they turn away from its signs. And He it is who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon, each gliding along in its orbit. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Murabi Sahib. We, as I said, now come to a final session of this Quran and Science Symposium, but by no means is this the end of our journey. It's a long, infinite journey in understanding the Quran and all the scientific points. MashaAllah, this morning we explored some of them. We'll continue to do so in this session. And I have with me on the podium, on the stage here, one of our moderators, Dr. Athar Malik Sahib. He'll be joining me. And also from the ladies' side, our respected Sadr Lajna Dhiya Bakr Sahiba, and also Dr. Amtul Ahmad Sahiba will be joining from the ladies' side. There's a slight change in the program. One of our presenters was unable to attend the session today, so we're going to go straight to the ladies today. And the first speaker will be Olivia Barber Sahiba. I would request respected Sadr Sahiba to introduce the speaker and to begin the session. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome everyone to this third session of Achieving Excellence at the Medicine, Science, Learning, Innovation, and Mentoring Conference, known as MSLM 25. We are honored to have you here with us today. As mentioned, my name is Dhiya Bakr. I'm humbly serving as National Sadr of Lajna USA and your moderator for this afternoon's panel with my co-moderator, Dr. Amtul Ahmed Sahiba, who serves as Lajna National Tarleem Secretary. Today's session is on the Holy Quran and science, the miracles of science. Just a review of our format, each panelist will address their topic pertaining to the theme. Thereafter, we will have a panel discussion with questions and answers. Please feel free to note your questions along the way. Before my co-moderator introduces our first distinguished speaker, I'd like for us to reflect on a couple of points. From chapter 10, verse 38 of the Holy Quran, it states, "And this Quran is not such as might be devised by anyone except Allah. On the contrary, it fulfills that which is before it and is an exposition of the law of God. There is no doubt about it. It is from the Lord of the worlds." And then the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, "The quest of knowledge is obligatory upon every Muslim." And combined with a prayer I learned early, "O Allah, show me the ultimate truths underlining everything," in my humble opinion, provides the philosophical and ethical permission to keep asking the questions, why, how, and for what purpose. Addressing the topic, the Oxford Dictionary provides the definition of science as the systemic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained. So with this example, mathematically we know by observation and testing that 1 + 1 = 2. Our task is to continue learning and providing through science that the Holy Quran is the exposition of the law of God, composed of ultimate truths in which all creation is derived. I now turn toward my co-moderator to introduce our distinguished speaker.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Dr. Amtul Rehman Ahmed, and I take pride in introducing Dr. Olivia Barber, our first speaker. She earned her PhD in environmental engineering from Northwestern University, where her research focused on the impact of disinfectants used on antimicrobial resistance and strategies to mitigate it. She holds a bachelor degree in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a master's in environmental engineering from Imperial College London. Currently, Dr. Olivia is preparing for a postdoctoral position while self-studying topics beyond her PhD with a current focus on mathematical proofs. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Olivia Barber. Jazakallah.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, respected guests. Today, I'm really looking forward to talking with you about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is the origin of life. I'm going to be talking about the environment that perhaps could have allowed the conditions for life to emerge. And what I also hope that anyone can take away from this is I'm going to be presenting a few tools that I used. I'm not a particular expert in this topic. It's something I'm passionate about that I've heard many speakers talk about. But anyone can use these tools that I'll present to look at anything in the Holy Quran to start looking basically at meanings that could be interpreted behind the verses. So throughout this presentation, what I hope that you'll see is the Holy Quran, in my opinion, supports the theory that life began in hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. One of the typical theories that many may have heard about is that the world was like a soup, this ocean soup, and out of it life emerged. That is not one of the most popular theories at the moment. There's kind of a number of issues with it. So one of them is hydrothermal vents. So what exactly are hydrothermal vents? We may have heard about them, but there are these chimneys at the bottom of the ocean. They're created in a number of different ways. The ones here that I'm showing are created by water interacting with magma below the Earth's surface. And what happens is the minerals that are coming off of this reaction create chimneys. Around these chimneys, the water is heated to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. It's extremely hot water. But that does not mean that it's devoid of life. In fact, there's a lot of different creatures living here, including tube worms, shown on the right-hand side, these long tube-like structures, which I'll mention in a moment. So when I began learning about origin of life theories and looking into different topics, I remembered a Faith Matters episode. It's an MTA show. I highly recommend anyone look at them. On YouTube, where Maulana Jahangir Khan mentioned in the Holy Quran, the tree of Zakum describes hydrothermal vents. So looking at these verses, I'm just going to read 65 onwards. It is a tree that springs forth in the bottom of hell. The fruit thereof is as though it were the heads of serpents, and they shall eat of it and fill their bellies therewith. Then will they have, in addition to it, a mixture of boiling water to drink. So what he explained was, if you even just look at this structure, it kind of looks like a tree. It has some branches. It's springing forth from the bottom of the ocean, often from magma, so it's a kind of hellish environment. The heads of serpents, he mentioned these tube worms. They're very similar. And in addition, the water is boiling. So again, when I started thinking about this more, I found this very interesting, especially that this is one of the theories that this is where life began. And I wanted to understand more what the environmental conditions are where life originated. So I think that many of us have heard that jinn refers to microscopic creatures. So the first tool I'd like to present is using Al-Islam, the Holy Quran and Al-Islam, and using the search box to search for keywords that you're interested in. In the past, I've searched for things like water, creation. It's very interesting, the verses that come up, and then you can look at the context of these verses. So when I looked at these verses, it says in chapter 55, verse 16, and the jinn he created from the flame of fire. What I like doing is taking these words and going to the Holy Quran dictionary and looking at the other meanings that you can take from it. But for me, I'm not an expert in Arabic, so to jump from this to the dictionary is kind of challenging. So what you can do is you can find the word that you're interested in. If you hover over it, it'll show the definition. And then you can go to the Quranic corpus, corpus.quran.com. There might be other tools, but this is what I use. And you can click on word by word. When you go, you can find every verse in the Holy Quran. And this is not a Jamaat website, it's a different website, so you might have to toy with the verse numbers. But you can find the word that you're interested in, and then you can click on it, and it will show you the root. So in this case, the root of this word was mim ra jim. I then went back to alislam.com, to the dictionary of the Holy Quran, and looked at the entry for mim ra jim. This takes a little bit of practice, but it's not too bad if you use the alphabet as a reference. So another definition of this particular word was a fire without smoke. I think sometimes we've seen it written as a smokeless flame as well. So that made me think, because the hydrothermal vents that we were looking at before definitely had smoke. They had a lot of black smoke coming out of it. But in fact, there's another type of vent that some researchers believe that life originated at, and that's alkaline hydrothermal vents. So recently I've been reading the book, The Vital Question by Nick Lane. He's a professor in London that I've seen speak on this topic. And in his book, he argues that it's not the black smoker hydrothermal vents where life originated, as some people think. It is these alkaline hydrothermal vents. So in the next picture, if you look on the right-hand side, that is the black smokers that we were just looking at. There's smoke coming out of the top. On the left-hand side, this is an alkaline hydrothermal vent. So they can often be quite ghostly looking. And one thing that immediately stands out is that there's no visible smoke coming out. However, this does not mean that there's nothing happening. And in fact, in this case, there's a huge amount of hydrogen gas coming out of these vents. This is significant for a number of reasons, but one is that a smokeless flame, in my opinion, you could interpret hydrogen gas as this. It's flammable. It does carry a huge amount of energy again, but it's smokeless. And I just thought it was so beautiful how closely that I feel this describes the conditions needed for the creation of jinn. Finally, I just want to touch on one more basic science topic. So another aspect I came across was that alkaline vents separate two different seawater conditions, and this is significant for the kind of push towards life being created. So if you look at the image, this is on the left-hand side is a simplification of the vent itself, and on the right-hand side you have a very, very zoomed-in microscopic image of the outside of one of these vents. And I don't want you to focus too much on what's going on in here, but just that the interior part is alkaline or very high pH, and the exterior of the ocean is very low pH. And at that time, a few billion years ago, the pH would have been much lower. This is significant because at a cell level, these type of differences are very important in driving different mechanisms. Cells like equilibrium, they like balance. If there's a big jump in pH, for instance, the conditions could drive any sort of kind of proto-cell or basic cell wall that had formed at the vents to start creating cellular machinery and begin at least moving the pH. DNA, RNA, other things like that is a completely different topic. So this is just a condition where a kind of pre-cell may have formed. And again, thinking back to this Mim Ra Jim entry, I found it interesting that another definition of this particular root can be he mixed a thing with another thing or two things together. And in the Holy Quran, it's he, God, has let the two seas flow freely, yet one does not become mixed with the other, in chapter 25, verse 54. And I thought it was interesting that there's a separation caused by these vents. And in addition, in 25:55, the following verse, it mentions something about man being created from water. So I feel like there is a connection. I don't know whether this is the connection, but I feel like there's something significant there. So just to kind of finish with some other topics that I'm interested in for those who are interested in this topic, archaea and bacteria having two different origins. These are two different types of life forms that we have. DNA and RNA having a chimeric beginning, so being mixed at the start. I think there is some support in the Holy Quran to support this. In addition, there's something called assembly theory, which is very interesting. These are just topics that if you're interested, to think about or talk to me about after. And one aspect of this, the kind of co-creator of assembly theory, Lee Cronin, has said that life is the universe developing a memory. And I thought this kind of made me think back to Fauzia Shah's talk last year about a kind of memory in quantum physics. The last point I'd like to make is fourth Khalifa, radiallahu anhu, in Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge, and Truth, said that, in fact, the entire research of scientists and their efforts to unravel the origin of life are no more advanced than the very primordial organic soup, that kind of basic theory I mentioned in the beginning, the mysteries of which they are attempting to fathom. It is a study at its nascent stage, or at the very beginning. So this is, again, a topic that don't think that everything has been discovered. We know very little about it, and there are many different competing theories. So finally, I just want to acknowledge the Salam Fellows Program, Jazakallah, for supporting me here and connecting me with other scientists. And just to go over the tools I use, the Holy Quran, Faith Matters, the Quranic Corpus, the Dictionary, the Holy Quran, and a couple other books. So Jazakallah, and I'm happy to speak after.
Jazakallah, Dr. Barber, for that insightful and really revealing presentation about the miracles of science. Jazakallah. Marabi Saw, I turn it back to you.
Yes, Jazakallah, that was excellent. I mean, I can see people here, even though they have food coma going on right now, they're paying attention, because it's about the origin of life, and it involves all of us. And she has opened up the fact that there's a lot of room for research, a lot of room for discovery, a lot of room for making a lot of Dr. Abdul Salams or Dr. Amatus Salams, whichever the case may be. Inshallah, may Allah bless it. But with that, we'll move forward now. I'm going to request my co-moderator here, Dr. Athar Malasab, to introduce our next speaker.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our next speaker is Shazad Khokhar Saab. Dr. Shazad Khokhar is an innovative immunologist with over a decade of experience in TCR T-cell therapy, autoimmunity research, and translational immunology. He is currently a principal scientist at T-Scan Therapeutics, where he leads cross-functional teams developing next-generation TCR-T products, clinical trial assays, and coordinating IND-enabling studies to advance immunotherapy pipelines. Previously, Dr. Khokhar completed his postdoctoral research at the Joslin Diabetes Center at Harvard Medical School, pioneering nanoparticle-based assays and multiomics approaches to study autoimmune T-cell function in type 1 diabetes. He earned his PhD in biology from Johannes Gutenberg University, where he developed novel mouse models investigating the interplay between coagulation and immunity. We're honored to have Dr. Khokhar address us today. His topic for today is unlocking the power of immunotherapy for cancer. Dr. Khokhar?
Assalamu alaikum. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As Athar Saab already mentioned, the topic today is unlocking the power of immunotherapy for cancer. For this, it is important to understand what cancer is. Cancer is an abnormal cell cluster which expands and really grows fast, uncontrolled. Under normal circumstances, immune cells will attack the cancer very early and stop the cancer cells to grow. But cancers, as a lot of doctors are in the room, know a way to evade the immune system. To understand how the evasion works, it is important to understand what is in the environment around the cancer, so the so-called tumor microenvironment. There are not just tumor cells in this cancer cells. You will have various immune cells, including T cells, myeloid cells, regulatory T cells, dendritic cells, macrophages. These are all immune cells which have a good interaction with each other. At the same time, there are a lot of cancer cells which interact with fibroblasts. Most importantly, T cells play a very important part in fighting the cancers. T cells are the so-called warrior of the immune system, which are mainly involved in fighting cancer, but also infections. The CD8 T cells, which are primarily fighting the cancer, they need a certain activation to work against the cancer cells. This activation or the interaction is required through the T cell receptor, shortened here with TCR. And this TCR activation needs a MHC complex. MHC can also be called HLA, because later on we are going to talk about HLA. And on this MHC complex, the antigen, which is mainly expressed by tumor cells, is being presented to the T cells so that the T cells can get activated, expand, and then kill the cancer cell. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Cancer cells have ways to evade this T cell activated killing. There are various immune suppressing molecules expressed by tumors, but also by the cells in the tumor microenvironment. Some famous ones are PD-L1, CTLA4, but also TGF-beta. The expression of these molecules results in the so-called cold tumor, that you have a tumor with less T cells inside the tumor microenvironment rather in the surroundings. And the aim is to actually have a hot tumor to kill the cancer. At the same time, what tumors also like to do is they like to recruit regulatory T cells into the tumor microenvironment to actually dampen the immune response. Regulatory T cells are actually used to downregulate potentially autoimmunity. Here they are kind of misused by the cancer. If we look some years ago, there was a Nobel Prize being awarded for the immune checkpoint inhibition. Here, specifically antibodies were developed to inhibit PD-L1, PD-1, or CTLA4. This resulted in the activation of the exhausted T cells, and you were seeing, or you were starting to see of cells which were not able to kill the cancer. They started killing the cancer cells again. This was a very big breakthrough in the immunotherapy field. Unfortunately, there are cancer cells which still have ways to evade that. We are coming back to this figure. Means, unfortunately, it's not just very simple to get exhausted T cells back fit. You will have various other molecules. TGF-beta, for example, was not mentioned. There's no way of downregulating TGF-beta that easily. But also at the same time, you have other regulatory T cells in the soup, which inhibit the formation of a hot tumor. The question is, how do we get to the point that we can actually treat patients more successfully in to beat the tumor? And there are, in the current market or in the current situation, we have various different ways. And most of these modalities which are now being developed is very much a personalized medicine. Here we are trying to learn from patients and identify targets to treat the patients. There are three different things marked here. One is the cancer vaccines, where we are sequencing for new epitopes or new antigens in the tumor to develop and train the immune system to identify these new epitopes, and then develop the T cells to fight the cancer. At the same time, we have chimeric antigen receptor and T cell receptor therapy. Both rely on engineering of T cells. In one case, we are developing a chimeric antigen receptor to mark a specific molecule which is being expressed on the surface of tumor cells. This therapy works very nicely in liquid tumors where we have B-cell lymphomas and others, where we can actually deplete the whole population. Unfortunately, it has its limitation on solid tumors. T-cell receptor therapy, on the other hand, that's the one what I'm working on. It relies more on a natural expression of the antigen, and you are relying on a more natural T-cell receptor. Coming back to the initial how T cells are being activated, they rely on the T cell receptor, which is being expressed on the surface of the T cells. They recognize on the MHC complex or HLA of the tumor cells the antigen which is being expressed in the tumor, and then start producing the cytokines, the chemokines, and other molecules to kill the tumor. As I said, a tumor or a cancer is very smart. It can downregulate certain antigens. It can downregulate certain HLA molecules, and it can produce various hostile molecules like TGF-beta, PD-1, etc., resulting in downregulation of the therapy. To address this, we at T-Scan mainly work on finding a way of how to improve a potential cell therapy where we are planning to target these different problematics. First of all, we have to identify the patient. We have to understand what is the tumor profile of the patient, what antigens are being expressed, what is the HLA type of the patient. And then we go into the immunobank which we have developed, where we are taking the different TCR-Ts, the so-called engineered T cells, and then we are attacking the cancer from different fronts. We have an antigen targeting a specific HLA, then we have a different antigen on another HLA, so that if the cancer tries to evade, we have a way of fighting it. So that's why we are trying to optimize and to use a multiplexed approach to beat the cancer. And inshallah, hopefully we will see soon some good results in that. I wanted to conclude with a verse from the Holy Quran. All therapies are good, but at the end, we have to rely on, as it's mentioned in the Quran, on Allah Ta'ala, as it's written here, and when I'm ill, it is He who restores me to health. And all therapies are good and well, but at the end, it's all in Allah Ta'ala's hand. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Dr. Khokhar Saab. Very interesting to think about the origins of life and then think about how the mechanisms of life are dysregulated in a process like cancer, and yet how that very cancer helps us understand deeper mechanisms of immune regulation in cancer and how we can use those principles to treat cancer. So very thought-provoking, mashallah. Next we have our speaker, Dr. Ijaz Ahmed Saab. Dr. Ijaz Ahmed is a process chemist with experience working in the pharmaceutical industry. He has worked at GlaxoSmithKline, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and Pfizer. He was awarded his PhD in 2015 in the area of organic chemistry at Syracuse University. His interest is in synthetic organic chemistry and the process development of active pharmaceutical ingredients. He received the MKA Talent Award in 2014 for his publication on the rapid synthesis of bienol derivatives. And he is currently serving the Jamaat as Regional Nazim Mal for Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya Northeast Region and also as local Motamid for Connecticut Majlis. We're honored to have Dr. Ahmed here today presenting his talk on signs in atoms, bridging revelation and molecular science. Dr. Ahmed.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. Jazakallah to the moderators and the MSLM team for setting up and organizing this conference and giving me the chance to come and also speak about this topic, which, as mentioned, is signs in atoms, bridging revelation and molecular science. And I'm going to start off with a story, so I'll take you back 200 years. This English chemist, Michael Faraday, he's also an English physicist. He was studying a liquid, and this liquid was obtained from compression of oil gas. And it was very strange. And as he was trying to study it, he deduced that this liquid had a roughly 2-to-1 ratio of carbon to hydrogen. And he gave it this name. He called it bicarburate of hydrogen. At the time, it was actually believed in the scientific community that carbon had a molecular weight of only 6 grams per mole. But later, it was found out that it didn't have a molecular weight of 6, it was twice that. It had a molecular weight of 12 grams per mole. So the calculation was later revised, and it was found out that this had a 1-to-1 ratio of carbon to hydrogen. And this puzzled the scientific community, because they couldn't figure out exactly what kind of structure this liquid had. It burned with a smoky flame. It was highly unsaturated, meaning that it wasn't saturated with hydrogens. It was only 1-to-1 ratio of hydrogen to carbon. But it was surprisingly stable. They would subject it to different reactions and different reaction conditions, but it wouldn't react. It remained relatively stable. So it was really interesting, and this kind of touched the interest of a German chemist, August Kekule. And August Kekule has done a significant amount of work with organic chemistry, and he was really interested in trying to figure out the structure of organic molecules. And he had, and pretty much you can see some of the structures that are here, these line bond structures that are typically kind of viewed when looking at organic molecules. A lot of that is attributed to the work from August Kekule. And this is really interesting. Something that was actually understood at that time was that a carbon atom can have up to 4 bonds to it. And I want to move to this verse from the Holy Quran. Sorry, I'm going to skip this slide. I'll get right back to that. From Surah Al-Fatir. I'll read the translation in the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful. All praise belongs to Allah, the maker of the heavens and the earth, who employs the angels as messengers, having wings 2, 3, and 4. He adds to his creation whatever he pleases, for Allah has power over all things. And it's really interesting, Surah Al-Fatir. Al-Fatir means the originator. And Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV, Rahmatullah alayh, actually inferred that this could mean, it could be interpreted as indicating the different valencies of the atoms, the elements that were there. And valencies mean how many bonds that can have. So something like oxygen can have up to 2 bonds, and that would keep it stable. If it has more, it would have a charge on it. Nitrogen can have 3 bonds, and carbon would have 4. And so this could indicate the different valencies of these atoms. Carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen are the foundation of organic chemistry, and they are the building block of life. Without carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, you wouldn't have amino acids, you wouldn't have proteins, you wouldn't have DNA. So it's really interesting to kind of see this. And this scientist, August Kekule, he understood that carbon can have these 4 bonds. And at the time, there was a lot of understanding that chemical bonds, they would always have these line structures. And you kind of can visualize, if you want to go back to your sophomore organic chemistry, those squiggly lines, those zigzags, that was your hydrocarbon chain. And kind of visualize it like a snake, that a snake is kind of slithering through. This was the viewpoint, this was the understanding of how these bonds were forming. And he was looking at this bicarbonate of hydrogen, this 1-to-1 ratio, and trying to figure out what is that exact structure of this chemical compound. And it actually goes back to a vision that he had, a dream. And he says that, I was sitting writing at my textbook, but the work did not progress. My thoughts were elsewhere. I turned my chair to the fire and dozed. Again, the atoms were gamboling before my eyes. This time, the smaller groups kept modestly in the background. My mental eye, rendered more acute by repeated visions of this kind, could now distinguish larger structures of manifold conformation, long rows, sometimes more closely fitted together, all twining and twisting in snake-like motion. These are those long carbon chains, those molecules. But look, what was that? One of the snakes had seized hold of its own tail, and the form whirled mockingly before my eyes. As if by a flashing of lightning, I awoke, and this time also I spent the rest of the night in working out the consequences of the hypothesis. That snake, going in a circular motion, eating its own tail, was the inspiration for him putting forth the structure that benzene, this 1-to-1 ratio of carbon to hydrogen, was benzene. And that's the structure that's shown here. And this is such an important structure because it really is the base of a lot of the developments that happened over the last 100 years. What's I found intriguing is that this structure was put forward around 1870, 1880, right around the time of the advent of the Prophet ﷺ. And in those, since then, we see that this benzene ring is found in so many different compounds and molecules that have been developed over the past 100 years. Not only medicines, but food dyes, food additives, those vibrant colors in your shirts, your different perfumes, these all come from these aromatic compounds, these benzene derivatives. And they've grown and become much more complex. Here I'm just showing just a list of some of the drugs that have been approved by the FDA in 2024. And as you can see, they all have these different benzene-like structures present in there. And pretty much essentially any majority of all APIs or active pharmaceutical ingredients have these benzene rings. So it's a really integral part and very, looking back at that revelation, that inspiration that he had really drove for that development. But I want to touch on to that sort of the last part of that verse, that he adds to the creation whatever he pleases, for Allah has power over all things. And this kind of hints to the future. We see in the pharmaceutical industry, there's kind of an merging of biology and chemistry. Here I have an example of antibody-drug conjugates, where you develop a small molecule, a compound that will then bind to an antibody, and that will be administered to help treat cancer. And it's working very effectively, and it's a really big, part of the industry. Also, synthetically creating different oligonucleotides to conduct chemistry and reactions with RNA. So this, having that merger and that development, that growth. But here, I just wanted to highlight this point, is that the complexity of drugs and these active pharmaceutical ingredients that are being developed by the pharmaceutical industry are getting much more complex. Here, just, we see Lipitor, for example, in 1996. You can see that structure. It's very, from an organic chemistry perspective, it's not very complex. You have some different sites of chirality, but generally you can see these aromatic, these benzene rings. But if we look right now, here I have an example of orforglipperon. This is being developed by Eli Lilly, their GLP-1 receptor agonist is going to be an oral drug that they're developing. Right now it's in phase 3. But here you can see just the level of complexity. And this is normal right now in the industry, that the molecules are developing, they're getting more. It's as if Allah Ta'ala is creating, we're learning more, we're developing more, and we're building molecules much more complex. And so, this just kind of wanted to point out that this revelation, that one simple revelation that happened was really something that inspired scientists to better understand how the chemical bonds formed and put together and better understand what that structure was. And that kind of helped to spawn a lot of the development of medicines over the past 100 years. So we can, as a synthetic organic chemist, that we can utilize a lot of that knowledge and understanding. And it's really inspiring and exciting to kind of think, from that verse that Allah Ta'ala adds to it. And so inshallah there'll be even more complexity, but also more better understanding, so that we can grow and develop and build and more medicines, inshallah. So Jazakallah to the MSLM team and for the audience for listening. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Dr. Ahmed, for a fascinating talk. It's amazing to see that as an example of the Quranic guidance that the Almighty Allah asks us to focus our minds on the topic at hand. And so here we see that this scientist focused his mind, and Allah Ta'ala gave him this amazing insight into a new structure of benzene. So Jazakallah for sharing that with us. Now we can turn towards our panel discussion. And so I would encourage anyone who has questions to come to the microphone to ask their question. It could relate to our current speakers or more general questions. And as Imam Saab mentioned, would you like us to start with the ladies' side, Imam Saab? Or?
I would, but he wouldn't. Yes, ladies are always first, sir. I'm sorry.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll take a stab at the question. So with the cancer vaccines under the T-cell therapy, I'm thinking about the hadith that says that Allah created the cure for everything except one thing, which was old age. But if the T-cell therapy fails and the individual develops metastasis of their cancer, what is the effect of these T cells? You know, what led to the failure of that treatment?
Yes, in case of cell therapy, even if there are metastases and they are expressing the antigen for which you are putting in the specific cell therapy, they will recognize that. In the phase 1 trial, normally patients are coming very late in their treatment. And most of the time they have metastasis, and if they are expressing these antigens, then you are targeting every antigen. Most of the time what happens is, with a lot of cell therapies, is that they need optimizations so that they don't get exhausted too fast. Sometimes, especially in solid tumors, as I mentioned, there are various ways of how tumors can evade. And there are some cancers like brain tumors and pancreatic cancers. They have a very, very good way of evading immune cells.
Jazakallah. Yes, we have one more question or two.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that, of course, like we've been talking about how to collect this research from the Qur'an and how to derive the meaning from the Qur'an and compare it to science and the environment. But how would the panelists best recommend to compile this information, or where to put it, or where to present it, or how would you put it together in like a research way? Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I can speak to that a little bit, perhaps. So I would say just try different things. First of all, as one of the previous speakers mentioned, keep an open mind. I really try to go into things allowing my mind to drift whichever way that I'm feeling like a verse could be interpreted. Later, if I feel like, no, that isn't a correct interpretation, that's okay. But just holding multiple ideas in your mind about how something could be interpreted, and then looking at the science as well to see how you could support that. Some ways I've tried to collect ideas, I've used things like online note-taking to save verses in Quran, pieces of research that I thought was interesting, hadith, and kind of categorizing it like that. I've kept notebooks at different times, but I think a lot of it is just reading and listening to different things, and you kind of build up something, kind of storage in your own mind. When I started looking at this topic, I hadn't particularly made any note of the Faith Matters episode where the hydrothermal vents was mentioned. But then it came back to my mind when I was reading about it. So I think just trying different forms of kind of note-taking and seeing if something works for you is important, but also just continuing to read and build up your base of knowledge are the two main things.
We have one more question. Assalamu alaikum. My question is for Dr. Shazad Sahib. Jazakallah for your talk. Just in general, what do you feel are the biggest limitations or challenges right now with TCR T-cell therapy, and where you hope to see the most research advance in terms of bringing these therapies into the market? Jazakallah.
Jazakallah for the question. I think there are a lot of challenges. We are, for example, the first company which is trying to treat patients with a multiplex approach. Before that, in T-cell therapy especially, it was a singleplex approach with respectable results. Our hope is that by attacking the cancer from different angles, we'll see some more success with it. Unfortunately, with all cell therapies, the cost is the biggest problem. To make one dose, it will cost sometimes 300,000, and then if a company wants to be profitable, then they have to accordingly sell it for double or triple price. One way of addressing that, there's a lot of in vivo engineering efforts going on in the industry and in academia, where companies and PIs are trying to introduce the engineered product into the patient, and then they are targeting sometimes in LNPs to the specific cells to engineer it and make them to attack the cancer, or in some cases autoimmunity. This would be one way of reducing the price and making it more affordable for everyone.
Jazakallah. If there are no other questions from the ladies at the moment, perhaps we could switch to some of the questions on the men's side. As we have a few questions lined up here, I would just encourage our khuddam and atfal, in particular some of our younger members, to also feel comfortable to come up and ask any question that's on their mind as well. But we'll start with Sadr Saab of the Scientists Association. Dr. Suhail Hussain Saab has a question for us.
I was a khadim not too long ago.
We'll count that. We'll count that, inshallah.
So, Jazakallah, I just wanted to first comment that these are such fascinating talks, leveraging the origins of life. One of my closest collaborators at Stanford is currently the chair of biology, and her work was primarily in yeast, then moved to mammalian cells for physiology, and then disease. And that's how the two of us connected, because the disease she was interested in happened to be the disease that I study, and I was interested in the same protein, a protein phosphatase, which was discovered in a small island in a fungal species, and it's calcineurin, which many of the audience as physicians know because of the blockbuster calcineurin inhibitors. But it all started with these origins of life and primordial species. But the question I have is different, which is, and this may be interesting to other oncologists, and it's for Dr. Shazad, to the oncologists here. I'm not an oncologist. It's why is a tumor that I know to some extent, pancreatic cancer, a cold tumor, and why is it so tough to crack the code? I remember actually sitting in a lecture with, I think, Jim Allison, right before he won the Nobel Prize, when he came to visit Pittsburgh, and it was like dazzling to see how you could crack the code on coming up with inhibitors of these checkpoints, immune checkpoints. But what is it, do you think, that is holding us back from being able to effectively treat something like pancreatic cancer?
As I mentioned already, that there are so many different ways of how tumors can evade immune cells. Pancreatic cancers are known to express high levels of TGF-beta, for example. And if you would not treat the patients, or if you would just use immune checkpoint inhibition, then even though you have the T cells ready, they will be still downregulated in their activity. So you have to find either a TGF-beta specific drug to inhibit that. I'm very certain that there are clinical trials ongoing for that. The problem is TGF-beta is needed to reduce autoimmunity. So you would treat the cancer, but at the same time cause autoimmunity, which is generally the problem with the immune checkpoint inhibition. But cancers like pancreatic or also brain tumors, they have such a big wall of the defense mechanism, which is still not fully understood. There are certain molecules which are known, which play an important role, but no one has been able to crack it until now.
We have another question.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is for Dr. Shazad. So the T-cell receptor therapies as well as CAR T-cells are often targeted for adaptive immune responses to either transplant or in cancer. But the innate immunity plays a large part in at least transplant rejection as well as different types of cancers, oftentimes mediated by DAMPs or damage-associated molecular patterns. Are there applications of this technology to kind of help attenuate these responses?
I think the people are trying to do that. What we try to do is, especially with the T-cell therapy, is to have an adaptive, means have the same donor, means you engineer the T-cell product in the same cancer patient. In case of allogeneic, you will have more problems with that. The aim there is to have a pure T-cell product, be it CAR-T or TCR-T, to avoid any specific alloreaction. So far, I think even in CAR and in our clinical trials for the liquid tumors, we haven't seen too much of that. So you try to match the HLA of the donor very much so that you are limiting any potential alloreactivity.
I sat down initially because I got the hint from Naiba Mirza that it should be for younger people, but if there's no one else, if I can ask the question.
Sadr Sahib, you also were once a khadim, so
once, yes.
we'll accept that as well.
I do represent the uncles now, so. Assalamu alaikum, Mansoor Qureshi. My question is, and it may be for anyone here, which boggles my mind, is we talked about revelation for discoveries. How about revelation itself? Any of the scientists here or those who are into molecules, have you noticed or seen any connection that we can start to explain this influence in our thought process as to what is happening at the molecular level? Because there has to be an explanation. So I don't know if anyone has insight.
Jazakallah, it's a very interesting question. It was touched upon by Father Qureshi Sahib as well in his talk earlier today about the hidden understanding or the hidden mechanisms that regulate thought and also underlie disorders of thought. Do any of our panelists have any thoughts on this particular matter?
Assalamu alaikum. I don't know, this isn't exactly a molecular response, but I have read something that Promised Messiah alayhi salam wrote that when, I'll paraphrase, but when he felt some sort of insight, he felt it in his heart, and that his brain was acting as a pump that would bring the kind of feeling or information up from his heart. So perhaps some connection to the heart, but his point was by purifying your heart, you can have a closer relationship with God and have kind of insights into different topics.
And I think that, Jazakallah for that answer, I think that also relates nicely to Salman Sajid Saab's talk in saying that we could prime ourselves for a certain thought process through reflection, through prayer. And we saw in the example in the discovery of benzene that scientist, he primed himself simply by focusing on that topic to, who knows to what extent. But eventually, through that focus, he gained that insight. So similarly, if we focus on the problem at hand, we may be able to gain new insights. And if we focus on prayer, if we focus on reflection of the Holy Quran, I think neurobiologically, we're changing the state of our brains to potentially be recipients of that, of those revelations or of those divine insights. The mechanisms of those, of course, are not fully understood, but suffice it to say that any thought can occur within one's mind. The question is, are you putting yourself in a state, are you putting yourself in a condition such that Allah Ta'ala could bring out a certain thought or a certain insight within your neural circuits? We have to certainly understand that process better, but it's a very fascinating question. Any other insights from Imam Saab or our other panelists?
Scientist time.
Well, this certainly extends beyond, this extends beyond our scientific understanding. We have another question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sahibzada Waleed Ahmed. And my question is more about the art of this science. So it's probably for Imam Saab. I'm just trying to understand what we are doing over here. Like, are we trying to say that everything that science does has to have happen in Quran? Are we trying to prove science through Quran? Or are we trying to prove that Quran is right because science and Quran are on the same page? In the past, we did not know about black holes. Black holes still existed when we didn't know about them. And it was in the Quran, but we did not know. We found out what black holes are, and then we saw it's in the Quran. But when we did not connect them, even at that time, black holes existed, and Quran was still the true book. We know now that we have stages of birth in the Holy Quran. When we did not know about it, Quran was still the true book, and babies were born the same way. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around the question that if one of these brothers, by the way, mashallah, amazing presentations and very informative for someone like me who does not have the background in these subjects. But if their research cannot be substantiated through Quran, is their research wrong? Or Quran does not understand those subjects? So I'm just trying to see, like, we are trying to connect everything between Quran and science, and this may be dangerous at times because we are trying to prove Quran as a true book because it's been proven by one of these brothers connecting their research to the book. And so, like, just as an example, one time in one of the gatherings, Masih Maud gave his opinion on some subject, and I believe it was either Khaja Kamaluddin Saab or Maulvi Muntari Saab. They asked him that, do you have any reference from Quran or Hadith for what you've said? And Masih Maud got very upset at that. He said, I don't need a reference from Holy Quran. He said, Quran or Hadith does not say that don't put this Holy Quran on the floor and stand on it. But we know that that's not a good practice. So we should not be looking for every reference from Quran and Hadith. So taking that as an example, I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the, how do we answer that question in this gathering?
Yeah, Jazakallah. I think I understand what you're getting at, and let's all be clear. The verse, actually, which was recited earlier, was one which I was searching for in the Quran as the speaker was talking. And it was surprising that as soon as I found the verse in my iPhone, he began sharing that verse. It was about the angels. It was alluded to earlier in a discussion that the angels are behind everything. And we know that the angels are the forces that control all the laws of matter, nature, etc., as assigned them the task by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then you look in the beginning of the Quran, it's interesting about angels, because they are asked the question that, do you know the names? Ambayuni bi asma'i ha'ulai in kuntum sadiqin. Tell me the names that I'm sharing with Adam. And the angels were confused. They said, La ilma lana. We have no knowledge, except what you grant us knowledge. So they are admitting, the angels themselves are admitting, our knowledge is limited. Limited to what? To the duty we are assigned in the creation. That's it. We don't go beyond that. So the 2, 4, or whatever numbers that are given of wings is the number of attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that angel has access to. Right? And beyond that, the angel doesn't know things. We are also a human creation. We know a limited amount of knowledge, except what Allah teaches us. So what we're talking about today is not that we're going to have total knowledge based and we can understand everything. We know at a given time a level of knowledge, and then it keeps increasing. So our goal here is to learn how to increase understanding, understanding and comprehension of knowledge which we didn't have before. Give you one simple example. Hazrat Muslim talked about the discovery of America in his book, I think it's Real Revolution. And I often mention this because he had the point about the idea that the world is flat. The flat theory still exists in some people's mind, that the earth is flat. So you have these flatliner theories out there. But back then it was more popular amongst a certain segment that the earth is flat. And he disproved it. It cannot be because the Quran is giving us the circular pattern. And thus he said that Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, a very great saint, saw a vision of expanse of land on the other side of the earth. And he connected that you would get there by following this ocean. That was before Columbus knew anything, but he gained knowledge from this person's revelation, his vision, right? That expanded his understanding of the whole universe we live in. As a result, Columbus goes to Isabella and Ferdinand, the king of Spain, and says to them, "There is land across the ocean, let me go." They laughed. Who laughed? The Catholic priest laughed at him that you're crazy. You mean to tell me you want us to believe that on the other side of the earth, which is upside down, people walking around and trees growing down instead of growing up? So this theory cannot be true, but based on our current belief system, which is we are the center of the universe, everything revolves around us, and the earth is flat. You see? For centuries, that was a belief system. And I say even up to now, some believe it. But how do we disprove it? We disproved it through the Quran. We disproved it through ilham, a khashif, a vision of someone who was a spiritual person who was connected to God. So this talk today really spoke to me. That's why I was searching that where is it in the Quran that talks about the angels? What we want to do is say we are limited, like the angel said, in our knowledge. That's the humility we got to bring into this. We don't know everything. We just can't. And starting from that point is, yet we want to search and grow and learn. This is a learning medium. You're correct. Today's knowledge can be disproved by some theory tomorrow. And today's knowledge, like the Catholic priest, they can stand up here, you get a multi and say, hey, this is nonsense. And that's been a problem in Islam. That was the problem. The mullahs, the ulama were saying, this can't be true. You know, Boko Haram kind of stuff. Just all this Western knowledge, all this education is a waste of time. Just go for salat, go for salat, go for a psalm, go for these things. That's all you need to do. All right? So long story short is, you're right. We don't claim to know everything. We claim to have the key to know everything, which is the Quran. Quran will not give you every point. It'll give you principles through inspection, through revelation. If a bee can be inspired, according to the Quran, to create honey, why can't a human being? That's our point. We can be inspired by the Quran. We can be inspired by God Almighty. And so now the last point I'll say is, when a person was assigned the task as a governor to go anywhere, the Holy Prophet Muhammad would ask him this question: if you face a challenge, what will you do? What will you search? What will you use to find a decision? And the companion would say, we will first search in the Quran. And he said, if you can't find it in the Quran, notice his question, if you can't find it in the Quran. He's not saying it's not there, but you won't be able to find it. You won't be able to discern it like I can or someone else can. So if you can't do it, then what do you do next? He said, then we'll search in the prophetic words and traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, right? And then he said, if you can't find it, then what do you do? He says, then we'll use our own God-given reason and judgment. These are the 3 steps we take. And I believe that's what we're doing here. We're allowing people that if you can't find something in the Quran, although it's there, we've not found it yet. It's there. It's all there. Khair kulluhu is in the Quran. But again, the Prophet didn't say, I'm a agriculturalist, so when a farmer came to him and said, plant it a certain way, and he says, well, why don't you try this? And they did it. And he said, well, it didn't work. He said, well, I'm not a botanist. You should have used your own knowledge in a sense, right? These, I think, are the slight differences we got to keep in mind. Let's be humble. Let's keep searching. Let's open ourselves up to possibilities, endless as they may be. And let's keep adding to what is going to also support the Quran. It will keep supporting the principles in there. At the same time, let's not say that we know everything on the Quran and therefore that can be right or that can be wrong. That's where we can't be arrogant. We've got to be humble about it. And this whole process for me is a very humbling experience. I mean, again, learning so much every speaker, alhamdulillah. And we'll keep learning. So I think if we approach it that way, we'll get a lot out of this session, this year, every year, this day. And as I said earlier, I'm speaking to myself now. Read the Quran every day. Do we do that? Yes, you say. Okay, how are we reading the Quran every day? Go deep into every single word. Every word is revealed. Find that root, as one speaker said earlier. Find the root meanings. Find their connections, the context, before and after. And you'll realize that we have very little knowledge. So we'll be like angels. We know nothing unless you teach us. And I think the great people before us, that's how they learned, that's how they discovered, and that's how we will keep doing it. And inshallah, there won't be any dichotomy between our belief system and our professions about science and the Holy Quran. I think with that, we're going to come to the end of our session today. I know there are always going to be more points to add, and by Allah's grace, the speakers today really gave us a lot of food for thought. Alhamdulillah, we've had conversations during lunchtime. They're going to keep on going. So if you found someone that inspired you, please contact them. Sit down with them. Ask them more and more questions. We can't cover it all in this session. Secondly, if there are questions that you have, burning questions that weren't being asked, hey, we're all still here. The session, like I said, this is never going to end. Allah is Rabbul Alameen. Rabb means He keeps developing from a lower to a higher stage. No matter how high we get in knowledge or ability, Rabb is saying there's more to go. There's no end to this. And so, alhamdulillah, this session is not ending now. This good man here is from Harvard, PhD, MD. He's got all the knowledge, and I'm sure he's sitting here like me today thinking, wow, I didn't know that. We're all in the same boat, so it's not a problem. Let's keep benefiting from each other. The angels didn't know everything, but when they all came together, then you see the glory of God Almighty. One angel, you can see some glory, but when they all came together, you saw all the attributes of God. You said, Subhanallah. Subhanallah, now I see the God. And that was the God that the Holy Prophet Muhammad saw. No other person saw that God because he saw the knowledge of every single angel that they had to benefit and give them. We're getting there. We're nowhere near that yet. So, Jazakallah for that final point, and I hope this laborious answer didn't put you to sleep, but gave you at least a final message to take home until next year. You got a whole year to think about it. Don't worry about it. A whole year to pull this in and think about how we go forward. But again, Jazakallah for your patience. Jazakallah for turning up today. I really wanted the young people to benefit from this and come forward. Feel this is your session too. It's not just us. Young man here in the front, come here for a second. Come here for a second. Come over here. Come on around. Bring your book with you. I was watching this young man during the sessions, and I was marveling. Hey, come over here for a second. What were you doing?
I was writing notes.
All right. Now, can you open your book and show him one page? Just show him the page. Yes. Look what this young man is doing. This is a student of Islam. This is what all of us are in this room and not realizing it. Taking notes and putting them down so we can remember them and go back home and begin to utilize that knowledge to go forward. So if you want to see someone that's working to be inspired and to become the next great, whatever, inshallah ta'ala, this is the step. right? Don't just come here and be passive about it and just listen to some nice lectures and go away. Put in the work. Take the notes. Jot down the points so you remember them going out of here. Otherwise, we're just going to have a nice session and go home, and I don't think that's it. We cannot get to where we need to be if that's all we're doing, is sitting here having a nice lunch, a nice meeting, and going home saying, Salam, that was good, see you next year. Be a student and learn and keep growing, and we're all going to benefit by working together on this, inshallah ta'ala. That's the goal. If everyone does this, imagine how fast we can go. The early Muslims were doing this. They wouldn't let a word go by without noting down and thinking about it and then going forward, inshallah ta'ala, or asking, what's the meaning of this? How does it relate? And so forth, asking the Prophet or asking whoever, right? So Jazakallah, let us all be students, and I appreciate you, what you've been doing and showing us a good example, all right? I wanted you to ask a question. You got any question in the end? Ask this man right here. I'm done.
No, I don't have any questions yet. I'm going to think of questions.
Jazakallah. With that, we'll end our session today. Jazakallah again. I appreciate the ladies as well, their patience with us. Their presentations were excellent. I wish we had more from their side. I'm sure next year they'll probably do that, a little more balance in it, because they contributed a lot to this program. And I think we can, again, appreciate what they are bringing to the presentation to the program. With that, the next part of the session, I think I'm going to have our co-moderator talk about that.
Assalamu alaikum barakatuh. We have a break now from 4 to 4:30 p.m. But as Sadr Saab AMMA mentioned after Zohar Nasr, at 4:30 there are several activities, including a poster session as well as a meeting of the Scientist Association and other meetings. I would have you consult your agenda to see what might be of greatest interest to you. But with Imam Saab's permission, we'll conclude this session. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum. We didn't really do no Quran. What's that? We don't